ಗುರುಪ್ರಸಾದ್ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾನ?
ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಬ್ರದರ್ ನಾನು.
ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು. ಗುರುಪ್ರಸಾದ್ ಎರಡರಲ್ಲಿ ಲಾಗಿನ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದ. ಸೊ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದರಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ನು ಡಿಲೀಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾನೆ. ಸರಿ, ಪೇಜ್ ನಂಬರ್ 372 ನಂದರಲ್ಲಿ. Thus, at the beginning of creation, there was a stir or motion. This motion was the basis of creation, and that was the sacred thing next only to God. The same thing appeared in the form of human mind. So the stir ಅಥವಾ ಮೋಷನ್ ಏನು ಬಂತಲ್ಲ, ಏನದು?
ಇಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ಮ ಬುಕ್ಕಲ್ಲಿ ಪೇಜ್ ನಂಬರ್ 312 ಅಂತ. ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಟ್ರೈಂಗ್ ಟು
312ನಾ? ಓಕೆ, 372 ನನ್ನ ಪೇಜು. ಅಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಡಿಫ್ರೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆಯಾ? 60 ಪೇಜ್ ಡಿಫ್ರೆನ್ಸ್. ಓ, ಎಷ್ಟಿದೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪೇಜ್ ಫುಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತೆ?
ಎಂಡ್ ವರ್ಗುನಾ?
ಹಾಂ,
395.
395. ಹಾಂ, ಸೊ ನಮ್ದು 448.
ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಾ ಕಂಟೆಂಟ್ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ದ ಫಾರ್ವರ್ಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಆಲ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ನಮ್ದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಫಾರ್ವರ್ಡ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಇಲ್ಲ.
ಅದೇನೆ, ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದೆಲ್ಲ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ, ಪ್ಯಾರಾಗ್ರಾಫ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ. ಸೊ ಎನಿವೆ, ದ ಸೇಮ್ ಥಿಂಗ್, ದ ಸ್ಟಿಲ್ appeared in the form of a human mind. When the time of creation came, preparation commenced, current flowed, vibrations intensified, formation of knots started, momentum gathered, and a churning process set in. Action and reactions begin and continued till objects began to assume individual forms. The process of creation came into full swing. Animate and inanimate objects began to come into existence. In the course of time, all the objects came to light and the universe was formed. So the process of creation ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. The Prakriti came into existence through the effect of the revolving motion around the center. The motion generated power which subsequently led to be the cause of creation. This primary motion, or the stir, which arose to be the cause of the cosmic phenomenon, was brought into action by the dormant will of God. So original motion, churning motion ಶುರು ಆಯ್ತಲ್ವಾ? What started the dormant motion? What started the churning motion, which is called as the stir, is the dormant will of God. The stir set into motion the latent powers, and the process of creation and animation started. The same root force, appearing as stir or stimulus, descended in every being to be known as the chief active force. In man, it came to be known as the mind, or the root at which there is the same dormant will, just as it was at the time of stir. Thus, the human mind is closely identical with the root force, or the original stir, of which it is a part. As such, the functions of both are closely similar. So, as of now, the human mind is working at the first point, individual mind. When we go higher and higher, we go more and more towards the primary stir. Now, what created the primary stir? What started the primary stir? It was the dormant will of God. Sarina? When we go back to near the center and established around or just above the primary stir, our mind gradually becoming finer and finer to reach that stage of the primary stir. Then, like the dormant will of the God started the primary stir, we would be able to receive the instructions from the divine, from the center. Are you able to make it out? So this is the center, this is the primary stir on the tributary. Okay, just around the center. Now, what started the primary stir? The dormant will of God. Sarina? ಈಗ the same primary stir has descended into man as a mind, and we have allowed the mind to become heavier and heavier by creating more and more samskaras through the course of many lives. However, when the primary stir started, when we started adding wheels around that primary stir, the mind started kind of coming down. It became grosser. As and when it became grosser, it came down. As of now, our mind is working at the first point. That's where the mind is working. The lowest point of the working of the mind is the first point. Now, as we lose the samskaras, the mind becomes finer and finer. As the mind becomes finer, it starts going back to its original state. What was the original state? It was the same thing as the primary stir. Does it make sense? Now, when you cross the primary stir, what caused the primary stir? The primary will of God, the dormant will of God. So, when we are established at the level of the primary stir, we can catch the will of the God. That state, when we are established just above the primary stir, is the state of Brahmanishta, where our will is now in alignment with the divine will, which is coming from the center. So, whatever you will at that level, it will be coming to fructification. That's all that happens. ಇದು ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆಯಾ? ಅರ್ಧಂಬರ್ಧ ಆಯಿತು, half and half. Does it make sense? So the primary still is the mind in human being. But of course, not the original condition of the mind when it was first created. The current mind that we have got, which is working at the first point, is an accumulation of samskaras over n number of lives. Now, if the samskaras are shed, the mind gets back its original nature. And where is this root force of the mind? It is coming from the primary stir. What started the primary stir? The dormant will of God. So when we establish ourselves at the primary stir, we will be able to receive the will of God directly. Then we become the instruments of nature. At that level, since the primary stir was the reason for all the forces of nature to be created, when we establish ourselves just around the primary stir, just above the primary stir, we start gaining control over all the powers of nature. Because we are now more subtle than the primary stir. So anything which is grosser, we gain power over. That's the rule of nature. The more subtler you are, you gain power over the grosser. Mind is finer or subtler, so it has power over the body. Right? The soul is finer, so it has power over the mind. So it's the rule of nature. The thing which is subtler controls that which is grosser. Does it make sense? Priya sister, you are not even nodding your head. You are just sitting quietly like a Bombay doll. ಒಬ್ರು ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಒಬ್ರು ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ. One person turns off the video, other person turns off the video. So it's like they're in a musical chair.
Today it is little bit
Oh,
ಒಬ್ಬಳನ್ನ
ಮಗು
ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೋಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ,
ಅದಕ್ಕೆ
ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ.
ಬಿಡ್ತಾನೆ ಇಲ್ವಾ ಅವಳು?
ಅಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ರೂ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಆಚೆ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ,
ಓ,
ಇವಳು
ನೀವ್ ಒಬ್ನೇ
ಮಲ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ಲು.
ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಹಾ
ಮಗು ನೋಡ್ತಾ
ಹಾ,
ಒಬ್ನೇ
ಈಗ
ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಎದ್ದಿದ್ದಾಳೆ.
So you have to primary duty of taking care of your daughter.
ಸಮಾಧಾನ
ಎಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ
ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು.
ಪಿಳಿ ಪಿಳಿ ಕಣ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾಳಂದ್ರೆ, ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಗುಂಡಿಗಿದ್ದಾಳೆ, ಪಿಳಿ ಪಿಳಿ ಕಣ್ಬಿಟ್ಕೊಂಡು, ಈ ದಪ್ಪ ಕಣ್ಣು, ಸೈಲೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾಳೆ ಅಪ್ಪನ ಹತ್ರ ಓಕೆ ಅಂತ.
ಸುತ್ತಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಅಳ್ತಾಳೆ.
ಈಗಿಂದನೇ ಸುತ್ತಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾ? ಸಿ ಪ್ರಿಯಾ, ಇವನ್ ಅಟ್ ದಟ್ 2 months old, she wants to go around ಅಂತ. She doesn't want to stay at home. She wants to go round and round. You have to take her out. Priya is ready to go out. She is just waiting for me to say yes. That's it. ಸರಿ, ಅವಳ ಕಣ್ಣು ನೋಡಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ದಪ್ಪ ಇದೆ, ಪಿಳಿ ಪಿಳಿ ಅಂತ ಕಣ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾಳೆ ಅವಳು.
ಸುಧಾ ಸಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಅದೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ನಿಮ್ ಮಗಳ ತರಾನೇ ಇದೆ ಅಂತೆ.
ಏನು?
ನಿಮ್ ಮಗಳ ಕಣ್ ತರಾನೇ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಸುಧಾ ಸಿಸ್ಟರ್
ಹೌದು
ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ.
ಹೌದು, ನನ್ನ ಮಗಳು ಅಷ್ಟೇ, ತುಂಬಾ ದೊಡ್ಡದು ಕಣ್ಣಿತ್ತು ಅವಳದು. ಅವಳು ಇದರೆಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ಭರತನಾಟ್ಯ ಮಾಡಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಕಣ್ಣು ಇನ್ನೂ ದೊಡ್ಡದಾಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ಬಟ್ ಅಟ್ ದಟ್ ಏಜ್ ಹರ್ ಐಸ್ ಇಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಪ್ರಾಮಿನೆಂಟ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ. ಈಗಲೇ ಕಣ್ಣು ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ ಹಿಂಗೆ.
Unless until she have any trouble, she will not cry. He just
He's quite
so
baby
silent.
actually. He doesn't cry much, I think. She's very quiet.
Very much quiet actually.
ಈಗ ಅಳಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಅಳಕ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ ನೋಡು. ನಾನು ಅಳ್ತೀನಿ ತೋರಿಸ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ.
ಇಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಯು ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾರಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಲಿ. ಐ ಆಮ್ ನಾಟ್ ಏಬಲ್ ಟು ಸಿ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ಶಿ ಇಸ್ ಟ್ರೈಂಗ್ ಟು ಸೇ.
ಆಹಾ. ಓ, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಮನೆ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಓಡಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ಯಾ? ರೌಂಡ್ ಹೊಡಿತಾ ಇದ್ಯಾ?
ಅಲ್ಲ, ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಕಾರಿಡಾರ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಸುತ್ತಾಡ್ತೀನಿ.
ಆ, ಸರಿ ಸರಿ.
ಹ್ಮ್.
ಆಯ್ತು. ಸರಿ ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ. ಸೊ could you make out, so whenever now you think of the human mind, think of its original connection with the prime minister. And where is the prime minister? The prime minister is next to God. Can you make the connection between these three? The human mind is connected to the prime minister. And where is the prime minister? The prime minister is next to God. So our journey is to regain the original structure of the mind, original functioning of the mind, which is in tune with the prime minister. Does it make sense? ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. They are all thinking, what is this thing? But anyway, just remember these three. I think that will be easy. The God's dormant will, God is there, which is the center. God's dormant will started at the prime minister. From the prime minister, we actually got the mind. The prime minister descended in every organism. In human being, it descended at the mind. So what is there next to the mind? When the mind goes back to its origin, it goes towards the prime minister. What is next to prime minister, which is the dormant will of God, and when we get established there, we can actually catch hold of the will of God. ತುಂಬಾ ಸತಿ ಡೈಲಾಗ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, ದ ಡೈಲಾಗ್ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಸೇ, ये डायलॉग मारते हैं ना, ऐसा कि जो भी भगवान की इच्छा हो उसी के हिसाब से चले. Now nobody knows what is Bhagwan's will, but ये तो डायलॉग तो मारेंगे ऐसा. So whatever God will say, let that happen. Now, as of now, we don't know what God wills. That is because we are at a different state, level of functioning of the mind compared to where the will is originating. Suppose we move towards that particular place where we can actually catch hold of the will directly. Then it becomes so much easy. Then whatever happens, happens according to divine will. That's all it is. So you have no role to play at that time. Priya is heaving a sigh of relief. When will we reach that stage? That's her question. She is heaving a sigh of relief here only. ठीक है. So thus the human mind is closely identical with the root force or the original state of which it is a part. As such, the functionings of both are closely similar. ಏನ್ರಿ ವರುಣ್ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಆಫೀಸಿಂದ ಮನೆಗೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ?
ಬ್ರದರ್ ಮನೆಗೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ.
ಡ್ರೈವ್
ಆನ್ ದ ವೇ.
ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ.
ಇಲ್ಲ ಕ್ಯಾಬ್, ಆಫೀಸ್ ಕ್ಯಾಬ್.
ನನಗೆ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಸಂಡೇಯಿಂದ ವರುಣ್ ಜಾಕ್ ಫ್ರೂಟ್ ತಂದ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈ ಸ್ಯಾಟರ್ಡೆ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತು. ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಯಾಟರ್ಡೆ ಇಂದ ಇದೇ ಡೈಲಾಗ್ ಹೊಡಿತಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಹೌದು ಹೌದು ಹೌದು, ನಾಳೆ ತಂದ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ ಬ್ರದರ್. ಈ ವೀಕ್ ಫುಲ್ ಬಿಸಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೆ.
ಜಾಕ್ ಫ್ರೂಟ್ ಇವಾಗ ಹಣ್ಣಾಗಿ ಅದು
ಇಲ್ಲ
ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ
ಇಲ್ಲ
ಅಂತ ನೋಡ್ಬೇಕೀಗ, ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಜಾಕ್ ಫ್ರೂಟ್ ಅಂತ.
ಇಲ್ಲ ಅದು ನಂಗೆ ಎದುರುಗಡೆ ಮನೇಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವರು,
ಹಾ,
ಅವ್ರ ತೋಟದದು. ಸೊ
ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು.
ನಾನು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅಂತಾನು ಒಂದ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡೆ. ನಾನು ಒಂದೊಂದ್ ಕೊಟ್ರು, ಇಲ್ಲ ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ ಕೊಡಿ ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡೆ. ಸೊ ಅದಿನ್ನ ಹಣ್ಣು ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ. ನಾಳೆ
ಆಗಿಲ್ವಾ? ಸೊ
ತಂದ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ.
ಇವ್ರ
ಹಾ,
ಶೂರಾ ಹಣ್ಣಾಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ?
ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕಾಯಿ ಇತ್ತು ಅವಾಗ ಅವ್ರು ಕೊಟ್ಟಾಗ. ಸೊ ಇವಾಗ
ಒಂದ್ ವಾರ
ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ
ಆಯ್ತಲ್ಲ,
ಹಣ್ಣಾಗ್ತದೆ. ಹಾ, ಹಣ್ಣು
ಒಂದ್ ವಾರ
ಆಗ್ತಾ
ಆಗಿದೆ
ಇದೆ
ಅಂದ್ರೆ
ಈಗ.
ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಹಣ್ಣು ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ
ಹಾ, ಇವಾಗ
ಅಲ್ವಾ?
ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಇವಾಗ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ. ನೀವು ಆ ಸ್ಟೇಜ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆ.
ಹಾ,
ಸೊ ನಾಳೆ
ಆಯ್ತು.
ತಗೊಂಡ್ಬರ್ತೀನಿ.
ಏನೋ ನನಗೆ ಸಮಾಧಾನ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಿ. ಆಸೆ
ಇಲ್ಲ,
ತೋರಿಸಿ ತೋರಿಸಿ ತೋರಿಸಿ.
ಸಾರಿ
ಹಾ,
ಬ್ರದರ್, ಸಾರಿ. ಹಾ,
ಅಲ್ವೇನು? ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಗೋಪಾಲ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಸ್ವೀಟ್ ತಂದ್ಕೊಟ್ಟಂಗೆ. ಗೋಪಾಲ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಆಸೆ ತೋರಿಸಿ 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 ಸ್ವೀಟ್ ತಂದ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ. ಹಾ ಸೊ ಆ ಥರ ಇಬ್ರು ಕಾರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದೀರ. ಹಾ ಇಬ್ರು ಅಪ್ಪಟ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ಇವತ್ತು
ನಾಳೆ ಮತ್ತೆ
ಗೋಪಾಲ್ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಇವತ್ತು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಬ್ಯಾಗ್ ಹಾಕೊಂಡ್ ಬಂದಿದ್ದ
ಹ್ಮ್
ಸಿಟ್ಟಿಂಗಿಗೆ. ಓ ಏನೋ ಇವನು ಇವತ್ತು ಸ್ವೀಟ್ ತಂದಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡೆ. ಆಯ್ತಾ, ಆ ಬ್ಯಾಗ್ ನೋಡಿ ಸೈಜ್ ನೋಡಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ನಾನು ಐ ವಾಸ್ ಶೋರ್ ದಟ್ ಓ ಏನೋ ಸ್ವೀಟ್ ತಂದಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಅಂತ. ಆಯ್ತಾ,
ಓ
ಲಾಸ್ಟಿಗೆ ಬಾಂಬ್ ಹಾಕ್ತಾನೆ, ಏನು ಸ್ವೀಟ್ ತಂದಿಲ್ಲ ಇವತ್ತು ಅಂತ. ಆಯ್ತಾ, ಸೊ ಆ ಥರ ನಮ್ಮ ವರುಣ್ ಒಂದು ವಾರದಿಂದ ನನಗೆ he is making me more and more crave for jackfruit, so that he is building up the tension for jackfruit inside, and then suddenly he's going to make it appear. So Priya sister, you get jackfruits North India, or you don't get it much there?
We get it, brother, but we don't eat it like a ripened one. We make
Ah.
sabji, that unripe one.
Oh, you don't eat the bag had bike accessories and wanted to get it fitted. Nin bike accessories, what shall I do with your bike accessories? I am looking for my item, not your items. ಆಯ್ತಾ, ಸರಿ ಆಯ್ತು. Pointing out the cause of the stir, I would remark that perfect calmness preferred before creation came into existence. So, what is there before the stir came into existence? What was there? Perfect calmness. Every power or force lay frozen at its origin. The time for the change, however, came, motion got awakened and set things into action, resulting in the formation of forms and shapes in accordance with the will of nature. At the root of all these things, there was something which we might call as an active force, but that too must have a base for itself, without which it cannot have its function, action, and it was the ultimate. Thus, we come to the conclusion that creation was the result of the motion, and the motion that of the base, which is and shall be. So, base ಇದೆ, base ಪಕ್ಕ motion ಇದೆ, a motion in the entire creation came. We also came out of that creation, and what we got from that particular motion is the mind. So we need to go back there to reach the stage of the ultimate. Once we reach the stage of the primary stir, then immediately next to that is the state of the ultimate. That's all it is. So ಎರಡೇ step. Take the mind towards the stir and then jump over the stir, and that's it. Your journey is done. 2 steps. ತ್ರಿವಿಕ್ರಮ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ, ತ್ರಿವಿಕ್ರಮ ಯಾರು? ತ್ರಿವಿಕ್ರಮ ರೂಪ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, फाइंड आउट पार्ट. सो आपको पता है प्रिया सिस्टर, त्रिविक्रम कौन है? त्रिविक्रम का रूप क्या होता है? तो आपको पता करना पड़ेगा. यू हैव टू फाइंड इट आउट. ವಿಷ್ಣುನೇ, ಎಲ್ಲಾನು ವಿಷ್ಣುನೇ, ಅವತಾರ ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿಷ್ಣುನೇ. ಬಿಯಾಂಡ್ ದಟ್ ಯು ಟೆಲ್ ಮಿ ದಟ್. ಆಯ್ತಾ? So I think these few things you probably got. Vamana. When Vamana comes, Vamana is not Trivikrama. Vamana is Vamana. Then how does Vamana become Trivikrama? That's the story you have to find out now. ವರುಣು ಗೊತ್ತಿರುತ್ತೆ.
ಹಾ ಬ್ರದರ್, ಅದೇ ಅದೇ ಮೂರು ಇದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ವಾಮನ ಅದೇ ಅಲ್ಲ ಅವರದು. ಸೊ ಬಲಿ
ಚಕ್ರವರ್ತಿ ಕತೆ.
ಕತೆ.
So Vamana asked Bali Chakravarti, give me the space for 3 of my steps.
Right.
And Bali Chakravarti says, only your small baby steps. Okay, you can have any amount of steps. Then once he guarantees that, he promises that you can have 3 steps. Then Vishnu grows bigger and bigger and bigger. He grows to such an extent that the entire earth he covers with 1 foot, 1 step. earth god. Then the entire Akash, he covers with one step. So that also gone. Now the question comes, where shall I keep my third step? Then says there's no other space left. Only my head is there. You can keep your foot on my head. That's the only space left for you to keep your third feet. So then, so that avatar, when Vamana gets converted into the very big form, gigantic form, that form is called as the Trivikrama. Three means three. Vikrama means somebody who won over three steps. So what were the three steps? One on the entire earth, the second one entire Akash, and the third one was over Bali Chakravarti's head. So that's why it's called as Trivikrama. He won over three steps. So Trivikrama. Vikrama means somebody who's won over. So three means three. So Trivikrama means somebody who had won over the three steps. And that is Vamana when he got converted into the gigantic form. And that form is called as the Trivikrama. ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಾ ಗೋಪಾಲ್ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಸರಿ ಇದರ ಏನಾದರೂ ಡೌಟ್ ಇದೆಯಾ ವೆರಿ ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್ ಇದೆ ಸೆಂಟರ್ ಪಕ್ಕ ಮೋಷನ್ ಇದೆ ಮೋಷನ್ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಶುರು ಆಯಿತು ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಡಾರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ವಿಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಗಾಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಂದ ಶುರು ಆಯಿತು ಆ ಮೋಷನ್ ಎಲ್ಲರಲ್ಲೂ ಇಟ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟೆಡ್ ಆಲ್ ದ ಪವರ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ನೇಚರ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಡಿಸೆಂಡೆಡ್ ಇನ್ ಟು ಎವ್ರಿ ಬೀಯಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್ ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ದ ಮೈಂಡ್. So as of now, what is happening? The God's will is descending. It's coming down through the primary stir and then coming down to the individual mind of the humans. But before it comes down, it gets filtered in multiple directions. It is altered, so to say, because we are away from the source. It's like as we go higher and higher towards the source of Ganges, the water there is purer and purer. The further away we go from the origin, the water becomes more and more contaminated. Right? Exactly the same thing. The further away we are from the center or the primary stir, and we receive that command in God's will at our level, it is contaminated by so many things in between. But the further away, the further more you go towards the source, we can actually catch the direct will of God without any contamination, as it is. That is what happens. That is our journey. Sarina? So now the concept of space and time. Some of these things are written in so woolly way. Sometimes it becomes very difficult to catch hold of the essence of it. It's written in a very, very abstract way. So you have to stretch your mind, and the mind, which is kind of not so subtle consciousness, it's very difficult to stretch the mind because the consciousness is so gross. How can you stretch the mind when the consciousness is so gross? When the consciousness becomes more and more subtle, the mind becomes stretchable. Okay, so let's read through the space and time. Before creation, there was only space all over, all over. Thus, the being of God was a later development. The God means Isha, and it took some time for its appearance. Here, when I say Isha, Isha means the God of creation. That things that you see in creation. We are not talking about the center. The center is something. We are now talking about the God of creation. We see space as endless and eternal, so we conclude that God as well is to be eternal. Time followed after God had come into being. The space served as the mother of the creation to God, and time was the negative state of it. So first space ಇತ್ತು ಸ್ಪೇಸ್ ಇಂದ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಒಂದು ಸೆಂಟರ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಯಿತು ಅದು ಗಾಡ್ ಆಯಿತು ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಮುಂದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ಟೈಮ್ ಬಂತು ಸೊ ಸ್ಪೇಸ್ ಗಾಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಟೈಮ್ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಸೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ವಿಚ್ Babuji has written the explanation here about the relationship between space and time. So originally space was and is eternal even now. Then there is the God which came into being, which is the center. And from there you get the time. Now everything must have its end in endlessness. Motion was also there in everything, however fine or invisible it might be. One might ask, who created space then? The only possible answer can be that the need for creation of God in the universe led to be the cause of the existence of space. ಸೊ ಎರಡು ಉಲ್ಟಾ ಮಾಡಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹೂ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟೆಡ್ ಸ್ಪೇಸ್ ಅಂದರೆ ದ ನೀಡ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಗಾಡ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಷನ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ರೀಸನ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಸ್ಪೇಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಶಲ್ ಎವರ್ ಬಿ ಅಂಡ್ ಇಸ್ ದೇರ್ ಫಾರ್ ಎಟರ್ನಲ್. Why not then worship the space instead? There is definitely hint about it in the Rig Veda, but the mystery remains unsolved and unclear for want of precise clarification. So he is not clarified further. Babuji has not clarified further. Why not worship space only? Why worship any god? But he has not gone to that extent and given you precise clarifications regarding why not to worship space. Okay, so in this sequence of events, originally the space was and is eternal. From the space comes God. From God comes time. This is a sequence. Space, God, time. Okay. If one develops within him the state of Akasha, he has then achieved the highest point which corresponds to the final state of negation, which everyone must duly aspire for. The solution is no doubt wonderful and at the same time perfectly correct too. Akasha or space is the absolute. It is not composed of any particles, nor is there any action in it. It is perfectly pure and unalloyed. It is of course very difficult to bring it to home to the mind of everyone. Akasha is space and Avakasha is time. Both widely differ from each other. Time, the creation of space, may be taken as a grosser state of Akasha. What is the relationship between space and time? Space is finer than time. Time is grosser than space. That's all it is. They are both related to one another in that way. As a matter of fact, the universe is the manifestation of time or Avakasha, while God is that of the Akasha. So God came from Akasha, and the universe is a manifestation of Avakasha, which is time. So God, space is Akasha, Akashದಿಂದ God. Avakasha is time ಇದೆ. From time you get the entire creation. The inner circle led to the creation of the outer universe. The intervening portion is the duration. If the outer covering along with the intermediary portions are get dissolved as it happens at the time of Mahapralaya, only Akasha or space remains. This is to say that the identity transforms into Akasha. In other words, the identity itself is Akasha. Now underline that. Identity itself is Akasha. So you know, there is Akasha, then there is God. From God came Avakasha or time. And from time came the creation. Now, at the time of Mahapralaya, what happens? The time is the intermediary portion. God is the original. Before God was the space. So, at the time of Mahapralaya, what happens is everything is withdrawn back into the space. So, the creation comes back in time. The time along with the entire creation, because the creation is nothing but the manifestation of time. So when both the creation and the time goes back and merges back into the center, it goes back to its original state, which is the Akasha. What is there finally? Akasha. That's why Babu writes, if one develops within him the state of Akasha, he has then reached the highest point. Serena. At the time when there was only the absolute and no creation, the question of time did not arise at all. When the thought of creation got enlivened in the base, it was perfectly free from everything. It proceeded on, and due to the effect of the motion, got transformed into power with its tendency directed towards action. But for the action, it must naturally stand in need of a field or base. Now, the brief pause intervening between the original thought and the subsequent being, in other words, between the cause and effect, was already there. This can appropriately be interpreted as duration or time, and it served for the purpose of its action. This time, having merged into the power, got itself transformed into power for further actions towards creation. So it's very intricate. This particular paragraph ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, it's very, very intricate. What was there before creation? The absolute was there. ಇದೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತು. Now we are going towards the absolute only beyond the creation. That is what our journey is. There was only absolute, there was no creation. So since there was no creation, there was no question of time also at that time. When the thought of the creation got enlivened, where in the base, it was free from everything. Only the thought got enlivened. It became a bit active. The thought became active. Now it proceeded on, and due to the effect of the motion, got transformed into the power. Power. The thought of creation now got transformed into the power, with its tendency directed towards the action. But for the action to proceed, there should be a field. Now, there was a brief pause in intervening between the original thought of creation and the subsequent action or the being of the creation. This thing which is there between the original thought and the later being of the creation is the intervening portion, and that intervening portion is called as the time. What was there in time? The power which was necessary for creation was there in time. That time now got aligned to the power, and that now increases the pace of the creation. So the time itself is power. So that's the bottom line that you have to understand. Originally, what happened? The original thought was there in the absolute, and then you had the power which flowed out of that, and then you had the creation. But when the power flowed out of it, the time also was one of the power that came out. The time then got amalgamated with the rest of the power, and time originally, when it was created, it's like a standstill. There was no power in it. But when the power got aligned with the time became more powerful. So we now say Kalaya Tasmai Namaha. We say that everything in time, as if time itself is power. Everything happens in due course of time. Now, why does everything happen in due course of time? Because time itself has inherent power in it to make things manifest in creation. But that was not the original state. The original state was the time was there, but it did not have the power until unless it became amalgamated with the power. The way that we feel the time as of now is a time amalgamated with power. So it's not like when you look at the clock, okay, now it's 7:30, now it's 8 o'clock. When you look at the time, we only look at that aspect of the time which is mathematical. But you forget the power aspect of the time which is inherently present. So there is movement of power with the time, and that's something that we forget. And that's something that our ancestors used to utilize for their journey, for their work. So time when it was created was not powerful. It was one of the manifestations of creation which came from the original thought. But later on, the original thought also gave rise to the power. Now the time got aligned with the power and it became powerful. It accelerated the creation. Yeah, if I were to just give you a very simple example, when you create the clock for the first time, suppose you create a watch for the first time, there is no time in it. Although the watch can show you the time, right? Now you put power into it, whether you put a battery or you put a stir, whatever. So when you put the battery, now the time starts flowing. The time was there when you created the clock, the time was there, but it was not flowing. Now the power that you have put in the battery now gets amalgamated with the time, and it appears as if the time is moving. The time is passing. Now remember the state of the watch. Suppose you remove the battery from the watch. Then what happens? Even now, you remove the battery from the watch. What happens to time?
Stops.
It stops. There's a standstill. It just goes into a standstill. That's all. There's no time as such. But the moment you put battery into it, the time aligns with the battery, and the watch now becomes functional. You can actually see the time. In other words, the time when it was originally created was like a standstill. It did not have the power. Then the powers of nature came through from the original thought. They amalgamated together. When they amalgamated together, then time became very powerful. Does it make sense? Now, when we actually align with the power and go higher and higher, one of the things that you actually gain control over is time. Because now you are in control of the power which actually works on the time. So you can work in the reverse direction of time also. You can work on the forward direction of time also. So if somebody were to say you can go back in time and then set things right, you will not believe. But that's exactly what opens up as a possibility when you separate the time from the power. ಇದು ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆಯಾ? I'll just give you an example. You have had a thought of doing certain things, and then you have set certain things into motion to make it manifest. Subsequently, you get a thought that what you are doing is not right. And then now you want to go back in time and set that particular thing that you have processed, the process that you have started to manifest something to reverse it. Now, the process has started, but after the process has started, some time has passed now. Now, at this stage, you realize that you don't want to do it. Now, you go back to the process and actually you try to reverse the process. In other words, you can look at it as something that you are actually trying to reverse the motion of the time. You have set the process in motion. Suppose you have, like the terrorist has turned on the bomb for it to blast at a particular time, say one day down the line, But 12 hours down the line, they realize that they should not do it. Now, time has passed, 12 hours have passed. But now you go back in time. The process is on. According to that, in the next one day, it's going to blast. But now you go back in time and you want to reverse that process or halt the process. Does it make sense? So you are actually trying to reverse the time, so to say. In other words, if you had not done anything, that another 12 hours would have passed and you would have blasted. Now you go back and you actually try to stop that particular process. In other words, you're stopping the power of time to flow through that particular device. Otherwise, another 12 hours, the time would have passed and you would have blasted. Now you are actually stopping the flow of the time in that particular device. Does it make sense? In order to be able to do that, you have to go back in time. In other words, you have to go back to your previous plan and try to negate it or try to nullify it. So now the time is there at three different levels. The time that has passed, with which you are in tune, that is one time that you are actually passing through as an individual. Then there is the time that you have set in the bomb. That's the second aspect of the time. And the third aspect of the time that you are experiencing is when you are actually saying that I want to negate this working of this particular device. So you go back in time. When you go back in time means you go back in your thought process, you want to correct the thought process. So there are three levels of time that you are experiencing now. One at the physical level, one at the thought level, one at the bomb level. Does it make sense? So originally, before this motion of the time as with power, what was their time? The time was like standstill. Standstill means, you remember I keep telling you, there are two presents. There is one present which is within the purview of the time. So there is the past, present and future. That is one present. You got the point? That is the time that you are all thinking now. But you look at another present which is eternally present. When you go to that eternally present state, you are beyond the realm of the time. When you go into the eternally present, you can easily work on either the past or the present or the future. Does it make sense? There are two presents. One present within the purview of the time. So the past, present, and future. And there is another present which is beyond the purview of the time. And that is the eternally present. Okay. Now, when you go into the eternally present, you can work on the past also, you can work on the present also, you can work on the future also.
But how will they perceive while they are in that eternal present? How will I see past, present, and future all at the same time?
Whether you are, that's like saying just because you are present now, you are not able to see the future or the past. Why will you not be able to, even within the purview of the time, we are still able to perceive the past also and also project into the future? Why not? See, the time as we construct it, the present, the past, and the future. When we say eternally present, we are in that realm from where the time itself has origin. So when we are present in this eternal present state, we can actually work on the past, work on the present, work on the future. That's exactly what we do when we actually do meditation. We are going towards the eternal present of our existence. Our existence is eternally present. From that realm of existence, you are now, what are you trying to do? You are trying to work on the past. Are you not trying to work on the past? Why are we removing all the samskaras then? What are we doing when we work on the samskaras then? From the time perspective, what are we doing? Are we working in the present? Although we
Negating
are
what?
working in the present, we are actually working on the past, the creations of the past. Does it make sense? By changing the creations of the past and allowing that to pass through the present, we are changing the future. In other words, by being separate from these three, we are actually trying to change your future. But we are not directly changing the future. We are actually changing the future by working on the past, the creations of the past.
So
The
can
way
we
that the
say like,
creations of the past is going to pass through the present in terms of its manifestation of the future is what we are changing. 8 o'clock. Aita. Oh, next meeting idiyappa. Good. Thanks for reminding. But does it make sense? I don't know whether actually it made sense. Time has three
This
things.
still to me, this still seems to me like a perspective from present, not eternal present.
Correct. I'm just asking you to look at it from the perspective of eternal present. That's all I'm asking you to do. Aita. Although it
even I
may
think
be a
last
theoretical
time,
construct as of now, but I'm just wanting you to just keep that possible perspective in mind. That's all I'm trying to say. Now, when you reach there, then it will be like a practical thing. As of now, it feels like theoretical thing. Just be open to that possibility. That's all I'm trying to say. So, at the level of eternal existence, we are outside the purview of the time, beyond the purview of the time. When we are beyond the purview of the time, we can work on all the three. It's like a cinema shots. I went for a what do you say, a shooting of a serial. I acted as a psychiatrist in one of the serials. And you know what they did? I was there for one day, full day. They shot so many sequences of my uh, role. But after they actually shot so many sequences of my role, they actually fitted that role over the course of next 6 to 8 weeks. Does it make sense? So they shot something, and that shot was shown in the present also, in the future also. And they were also shown as past also. I can remember my past and my role as a psychiatrist there at that time. So it's like one of the actors in the play remembering the past and having that consultation with the psychiatrist. So the director has the capability to shoot something in the present and put it either in the past or the present or the future. Don't you think that the director of the serial has that capability? Now, when we become the directors of our own serial, our own sequence of life, we have the capability to put in wherever we want the sequence. That's all. Why can't you do it? ಏನು? ಪ್ರವೀಣ್ ಇವತ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲ ತಲೆ ತಿರುಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಏನಪ್ಪ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರು ಅಂತ.
ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಕೇಳಕ್ಕೆ ಓಕೆ, ಬಟ್ ಇಫ್ ಯು ವಾಂಟ್ ಟು ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ವಿಜುವಲೈಸ್ ಆರ್ ಕಷ್ಟ. Only one thing what we can say is like if we remove the samskaras, we can slightly modify our future. That one concept, okay, we can correlate.
ಅಷ್ಟು ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುತ್ತಲ್ವಾ? ಸಿ ಅಟ್ ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ಅಟ್ ದಟ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಗ್ರಾಸ್ಪ್ ಇಟ್. ಇನ್ ಅದರ್ ವರ್ಡ್ಸ್, ವಿ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಆನ್ ದ ಪಾಸ್ಟ್ and allow that past changes to pass through the present so that the future becomes different. That at least you can understand. In other words, if you have to work on the past, you need to be away from the past. That's why we cannot work on ourselves. We need somebody else to work on us. Fair enough. Sir, I thought we'll catch up because next English meeting is there.